Hello Saviors, GH here. Today we're going to do an update video on the #1 wizard build, which we're gonna call simply Elemental Wizard. It consists of Pyromancer, Elementalist, and Taoist. In this video, we're gonna show each classes and see what are the changes they made on this build, and that's gonna be it. And without further ado, here is the update video on the #1 wizard build. Date is June 8, 2020. Let's do this! Okay, here's the build. We got Pyromancer, Elementalist, and Taoist. And before we start, let's show the changes that the wizard received. And it's for the skill Lethargy. And what they changed is the attribute enchant Lethargy, increasing its duration from 60 seconds. They made it 30 minutes, which turns it into a decent buff. And for those of you who don't know, you can get that enchant Lethargy buff by just using Lethargy. But of course, you gotta get the attribute enchant Lethargy. And what this attribute does is give you a 30-minute buff that gives you a 5% chance to inflict Lethargy, which reduces both physical and magical attack, evasion, and increases damage of magic circles and continuous area of effect attacks. Okay, now let's begin with Pyromancer. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on who we're talking here, there's no changes to the Pyromancer class. Which is fine, because right now, Pyromancer is in a good place. And now for Elementalist. Now this is where a few changes resides. Let's start with the new passive attribute they added, and it's called Elemental Mastery. Elemental. And what it does is when equipping a staff or a rod, your damage against fire, ice, lightning, and earth property is increased based on the level of the attribute. As you can tell, the devs weren't satisfied with the damage output, so they increased the damage of elemental attacks by a few more percentage. And the next one is the previously named attribute called Fire Property Amplify. They renamed it to Elemental Amplify, and the function is also changed. Now, when using Fire, Ice, Lightning, and Earth property skills, the damage of the corresponding property increases by 30% for 10 seconds by 50% chance. When you use fire attack, and in this case I'm gonna use flame ground, you get 50% chance to get a buff that increases fire damage for 30%. Now let's test Storm Dust. And as you can see, when I use Storm Dust, I received a buff called Earth Property Amplify, and that buff increases Earth property damage by 30%. And here is Hail, an ice elemental attack. And when I use it, I get Ice Property Amplify. And when I use Eradication, a lightning attack, I get a buff called Lightning Property Amplify. You get the drift, right? Now, the last change that they did with Elementalist is they increased the damage of Hail when attacking a boss, which is pretty good because Hail is an excellent attack for holding down a boss at start. And that's the changes they did on Elementalist. Now for Taoist. And as I see it, this is where they went ham on the changes. Let's start with Lightning Charm. Now it's a 30 minutes buff, which is an awesome change because it's getting annoying trying to press Lightning Charm every minute. I keep asking, why not make it 30 minutes? It's the same thing but less tedious. I'm glad they did this, and I hope they do it to the other classes as well. Next one is they added a new attribute called Tri-Disaster Charm, Absorb. And what it does is change how Tri-Disaster Charm works. And instead of installing a charm that debuffs enemies, it now applies a buff. So I was testing this, and it gives a buff that stacks up when I use a spell. And what I learned is it's also a party buff. Yes, your teammates can also have this buff, assuming they are close to you when you use the spell. And with this change, I think it's for the better because most of the times bosses moves around anyway, and with this new attribute, you can also buff your teammates. And yes, they need to use attacks too to be able to maintain the Tri-Disaster buff. The next attribute they added is called Storm Calling Ally. And what this attribute does is instead of debuffing the enemy, they made the skill buff the whole party, as long as they're inside the area of effect. Now the last attribute they added is Staff Mastery, Lightning. Now this is a very straightforward addition. If you're wearing a staff, Lightning property magic attack damage increases. And that's the changes on this build. Obviously, the developers weren't satisfied with the damage of the build. That's why they buffed it even more. Which I agree, because compared to the other class 3, the wizard meta was lacking in damage. But it was enough. But I guess they realized wizards are supposed to be the most devastating class. Not swordsmen, not scouts, not archers, and not trio of clerics. Anyways, that's it guys. What do you think? Are the devs crazy for buffing this freaking wizard? Or do you think wizards deserve it? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like the video, hit the thumbs up, share, and then subscribe to be part of the Gaming Hardcore family. And as always, this is Gaming Hardcore. See you in the next one.